As Russia attempts to push deeper into Zaporizhzhia, it just ran into something it never expected. Not Ukrainian soldiers, not even drones. Colombians were waiting. Highly trained mercenaries who have honed their skills in the jungles of their homeland are in Ukraine. And they just did something amazing. Russians started dying, a position was liberated, but the real story here isn't just what happened in Zaporizhzhia, it's what's happening in Colombia. There are interesting reasons why so many soldiers from this country are heading into Ukraine. You're going to learn about them in this video. But first we head to Stepnohirsk. Throughout July, Russian paratroopers had slowly but surely started to infiltrate this small settlement. Having been pushed out once before by a brilliant and sweeping liberation strike, those Russian soldiers were desperately trying to grasp onto any territory they could, so their comrades could deliver the good news that Stepnohirsk was under control once more to Putin. The paratroopers were far from controlling the village, but infiltrators are dangerous, and this particular group had started to set up small positions in burnt-out buildings and other hidey holes, allowing them to direct fire at Ukrainian forces and set up ambushes to trap them. The infiltrators couldn't be allowed to continue, not just due to the damage they were capable of doing, but because Stepnohirsk is more important than it might seem. This isn't any old village. Stepnohirsk offers access to the E105 highway and with it a possible route deeper into Zaporizhzhia. If Russia is able to take control of this village, it may be able to use it as a logistical hub and a launch pad for assaults across the Dnieper River and eventually Zaporizhzhia itself. Putin's infiltrators had a clear purpose. Ukraine needed to eliminate them. After considering all the options, Ukraine settled on using Tactical Group Revanche for the operation. A unit of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, this group has been active since the beginning of the war and is believed to be roughly the size of a regiment, meaning it has between 501 and 1,500 members. But what makes Revanche special is who becomes a member. Ukrainian soldiers aren't part of this tactical group. The members come from far and wide to join an international unit. Tactical Group Revanche has already left its mark on the war. From the earliest days of the Russian invasion, the group was deployed to Kyiv and played a key role in halting the initial Russian advance at the Battle of Hostomel. Later, the group liberated Radinska in the Kyiv Oblast, and it had also seen action in Kharkiv and Chasiv Yar, in addition to fighting close to the Donetsk fortress belt. These soldiers are experienced, talented, and more than capable of taking on Russian infiltrators. Now, Colombian soldiers from Tactical Group Revanche are in Zaporizhzhia, and they just ruined the Russian infiltrators in Stepnohirsk. A July 28th telegram post by the group reveals all. After recognizing that Russian infiltrators had managed to penetrate into Stepnohirsk, Tactical Group Revanche took its time. The infiltrators weren't going anywhere. Their jobs were to find somewhere to hole up and then wait for supplies and reinforcements to arrive. Both were a long way from coming, so Revanche members took the opportunity to carry out extensive reconnaissance, taking advantage of every mistake the Russian occupiers made to perfectly pinpoint their positions. Once Revanche knew where the Russians were, the FPV drones were unleashed. Over and over, those drones smashed into the Russian position, making it clear to the paratroopers inside that they had been rumbled. Those paratroopers, already in a sticky situation, would have been confused when they started to hear Spanish on the battlefield. Revanche followed up the drone strikes with a ground assault led by Colombian soldiers. Before that assault, the Russian troops were given the option: surrender now or die in the fight. No response came back from the paratroops, so Ukraine's Colombian soldiers fired grenades into the bunkers and trenches where the Russian soldiers were hiding. The aftermath of one of the battles was caught on camera. We see Ukraine's foreign fighters enter a building, cautiously checking around for signs of paratroopers. One Russian soldier was eliminated in the fight, a second was captured. The operation was precise and lethally effective. It also turned out to be informative. We see from the footage that the captured soldier is already wounded. Wearing a bandage around his head, that soldier is trying to hide in what can best be described as an underground hovel. When he's found, he has his hands raised. The very first thing he says is, "I feel really terrible. Do you have any water or something to drink?" That right there exposes what Putin puts his soldiers through. There have been stories of a lack of supplies and water provided to infiltrators in the past. Back in May 2025, Russian soldiers in Kherson were even caught drinking from puddles after the complete collapse of their supply lines left them desperate enough to risk drinking dirty water rather than dying of dehydration. Now we see a clearly injured soldier in Stepnohirsk begging his captors for a drink. The paratrooper gets water along with a cigarette, and he is then taken into custody by the Colombian and Ukrainian joint forces. There is also footage of the interrogation that followed. The captured paratrooper reveals everything about who he is and, in doing so, exposes what Putin and his cronies are really looking for from a soldier. As a child, he ended up in an orphanage, along with his brother, after their mother snapped because she couldn't control them. That brother is also in the army, fighting in the Kursk direction, the captured soldier reveals. The soldier revealed that before ending up in an orphanage, his father had let him drink vodka from an early age. Dad ended up in prison for assaulting a neighbor and nearly killing him. The soldier dropped out of school after 7 years of education, meaning he didn't graduate. He was on his very first mission when he was captured in Stepnohirsk, and when asked about Putin, the soldier reveals what it's really like to be Russian. What's the point of voting anyway? Putin will always win. And when he and his cronies are in office, they look for people like this soldier, poorly educated, broken homes, desperate for money. If there is a way to exploit, Russia's recruiters jump on it. And all of this was learned because Ukraine deployed a lethal contingent of Colombian soldiers into Stepnohirsk. That brings us to the second big story here, or should we say the big question. What on earth are Colombian soldiers doing fighting in the hellscape of the Ukrainian front lines? The answers are numerous, and you'll soon find out that it isn't a case of a handful of Colombian fighters heading into the country. There are thousands. But before we dig deeper into that, this is a reminder that you're watching The Military Show. If you're getting insight from our channel, then hit subscribe and enable notifications so you see more coverage like this. Colombia is far more important to Ukraine than you may realize. Though the two nations certainly aren't allied to the point where Colombia actively supports Ukraine in its battle against Russia, soldiers from that nation stream into Ukraine to fight alongside people with whom they feel they sense a certain level of kinship. The numbers reveal it. Bogotá's city paper revealed in February that Colombians now make up the largest foreign contingent of soldiers that have entered Ukraine. Tactical group Revanche is full of them, as are several other units that are fighting on the front. The outlet says that as many as 2,000 Colombian nationals are actively serving in Ukraine's ranks as we speak, and that up to 7,000 have served in total since Putin launched his invasion. Colombians make up about a quarter of all foreign soldiers that Ukraine recruits, the outlet points out. Soldiers from this single nation are also willing to die to support Ukraine. The Atlantic Council reports that an estimated 300 to 550 Colombian soldiers have perished on the front lines, fighting for Ukraine's liberation. The big question still remains, why? This isn't just about the money, though the cash definitely helps. France 24 spoke to one soldier named Dairo, who left Colombia's military after 8 years of service. The pay for his work back home is poor, Dairo says. As for Ukraine, the brigade pays for our air tickets, accommodation in Bogotá, and does all the paperwork for us to travel legally, he says, adding, "When I heard about this, I jumped at the chance. It's what I've been waiting for." Indeed, the money isn't great for a Colombian soldier. Mid-level officers in the country's military earn roughly $1,000 per month while in active service. A rank-and-file soldier gets much less, just $400 per month. Military pensions in Colombia are also not enough to sustain former soldiers. Pay often drops by half, and the few programs that Colombia has in place to help its soldiers transition back into civilian life aren't fit for purpose. Most try to redirect former soldiers into private security work, but that sector is saturated. Job openings are rare, and when they appear, there is a literal army of former soldiers competing for the work. Compare this situation to what Ukraine offers. Beyond all of the initial benefits that Dairo mentions, those who sign up to fight in Ukraine are paid from the moment that they begin training. That pay was about $490 for training that can last up to 6 weeks, which is already equivalent to a full-time wage for a Colombian soldier. But that's just the start. Salaries for soldiers who participate in combat operations for Ukraine range from $3,000 to $5,000 per month, well above the average mid-level officer wage in the Colombian military. Ukraine offers signing bonuses, sometimes as high as $25,000, as well as a $350,000 death benefit delivered to families when a soldier is killed in combat. In June, Ukraine also implemented a pay-as-you-fight system for its frontline forces. Now, soldiers who take part in active combat operations can earn over $10,000 per month, Business Insider reports. Not only is that almost 30 times the average salary in Ukraine, but it's also a level of pay that is far beyond anything that a Colombian soldier could ever expect to get from their own country. The money alone is compelling, but there's more to it than that. For many of the Colombians who are fighting in Ukraine, purpose is as important as cash. Dairo makes that very clear when speaking to France 24. "We're doing it out of a vocation to serve," he tells the outlet. "Plus, it's a noble cause to go and fight under a flag that is not our own, but that of a people that is under attack. It's a bit like if a neighbor broke into my house." That sentiment is far from rare among the thousands of Colombians who head to Ukraine, and it offers a hint toward how these soldiers feel in their own country: lost, bereft of cause, and abandoned. Colombia had long been a nation that needed its soldiers, up until a 2016 peace settlement that left many who were in active service feeling as though their skills were going underused, along with them being underpaid. Colombian soldiers have taken to fighting in other countries, not just Ukraine, but also in Yemen and Sudan, because they feel they have spent a lifetime developing skills that go underutilized by their own nation. On top of that, it's the reintegration issue we touched on earlier. A Colombian soldier who may have up to 2 decades of experience dealing with counterinsurgency operations in their own country will be left out in the cold by their government once they retire from their service in their 30s or 40s. The civilian economy has no place for them outside of the saturated private security sector. That sector accounts for over 1% of Colombia's entire gross domestic product, and it employs hundreds of thousands of people. But that's the entire point. As massive as private security may be in Colombia, the sector is full, jobs are rare, and the other reintegration programs that Colombia has in place are doing a poor job of helping the country's former soldiers find work. Colombia isn't happy about the whole situation. A slew of legal frameworks has been put in place in an attempt to stop former Colombian soldiers from becoming mercenaries for Ukraine or anyone else. Colombia's president Gustavo Petro has even claimed that Colombians are treated as an inferior race by Ukraine's soldiers and are deployed like cannon fodder. There seems to be no real evidence for this, as backed by the numbers, which show that no more than 1/14 of the Colombian troops that have entered Ukraine are killed in action. It's also worth noting that Putin himself has claimed that Petro could be a promising partner, suggesting that Colombia's president may have a motivation beyond the safety and well-being of his country's soldiers. Still, Colombia is trying to prevent its soldiers from heading to Ukraine. In December 2025, the country's House of Representatives even voted to ratify the United Nations Convention Against Mercenaries. That convention has existed since 1989, so it's strange that Colombia only now views what's happening as a problem. However, this law doesn't stop Ukraine from recruiting. Those who fight in Ukraine's International Legion or are part of Ukraine's regular assault units aren't classified as mercenaries under this very convention, the Atlantic Council points out. Ultimately, it seems that Petro misses the point. Colombia has thousands of soldiers who feel that their skills aren't being respected, they aren't receiving the compensation that they deserve, and that their country fails to reintegrate them into society once their service ends. So these soldiers find purpose in fighting for Ukraine, and Ukraine has been more than happy to facilitate the arrival of Colombians into its armed forces. It's notable that the first soldiers who joined Ukraine from Latin America did so of their own accord, France 24 notes. It was only after a half-Argentinian, half-Ukrainian soldier that the outlet named Nazar helped to pioneer a scheme to bring more over that Ukraine actively started recruiting from the continent. Ukraine will argue that all it does is offer the opportunity. It's up to the soldiers themselves to make the choice. All of this brings us back to the remarkable assault Colombian soldiers carried out in Stepnohirsk, alongside their Ukrainian colleagues. The assault was fruitful. A capture was made, more information was gathered, and Russian infiltrators were forced out of the village. For Ukraine, this is a big win because it means that Russia is now further away from being able to make moves on the Zaporizhzhia targets they want to hit. However, Stepnohirsk still isn't safe. Far from it. This village has been subjected to fighting for much of the Ukraine war, and at one point Russia managed to mostly occupy Stepnohirsk. That situation was reversed in May 2026 when Ukrainian forces carried out a brilliant operation to liberate Stepnohirsk from the Russian occupiers. A series of assaults pushed Russia's forces back, stabilizing the situation in the village for a time. Russia's positions collapsed as Ukraine conducted a search and destroy operation that involved using aerial reconnaissance and precision fire to pin Russian soldiers down, followed by checks inside buildings to kill or capture any soldiers that remained. This operation was much like what we saw Ukraine's Colombian soldiers do in July, only on a much larger scale. It's unknown whether Ukraine utilized any of its Colombian contingent in this stage of the operation. Still, Putin hasn't given up on Stepnohirsk. He can't. The village plays a critical role in his plans for the rest of Zaporizhzhia. Toward the end of May, Colonel Vladislav Voloshin, who is the spokesman for Ukraine's Southern Defense Forces, revealed that Putin has sent the 7th Air Assault Division in the Stepnohirsk direction with specific orders to claim the village by the end of June. It's likely those are soldiers from this division that Ukraine's Colombian troops captured or killed in July. As for taking Stepnohirsk by June, that obviously hasn't happened. Just another insane and unrealistic deadline created by Putin that he ought to know by now was never going to be reached. As for what's happening in Stepnohirsk right now, we just saw Russia is trying to sneak infiltrators into the village. However, Ukraine is watching and waiting for any chance to take those infiltrators out. And right now, it's not Russia that is advancing in Zaporizhzhia, it's Ukraine. That's according to the Institute for the Study of War, or ISW. In its July 29th Russian offensive campaign assessment, the ISW said Ukrainian forces advanced in western Zaporizhzhia Oblast on a prior date. Archival geolocated footage published on July 20th and dated to June 2026 shows Ukrainian forces clearing Russian-occupied buildings in northeastern Stepnohirsk, west of Orikhiv, indicating that Ukrainian forces previously advanced in the area. So it seems that Putin's forces are no closer to capturing Stepnohirsk than they were when Ukraine booted the bulk of those soldiers out in May. Only now, Putin's patsies have a bigger problem on their hands. Well-trained and deadly Colombian soldiers are working alongside Ukraine to keep the village clear. Russian soldiers are dying at the hands of an enemy they never saw coming. And the odds are that many hundreds, if not thousands, more Colombian troops will soon find their way into Ukraine. We've given you some insight into the situation in Stepnohirsk right now. But what if you want to learn more about how Ukraine liberated the village in the first place? If that sounds like you, then we have you covered. We reported on the Stepnohirsk liberation when it happened, and we revealed why it was so important. Dramatic battlefield footage and a deeper understanding of what that settlement means in the fight for Zaporizhzhia await. Check out the video after you're finished here, but before you go, we hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to hit subscribe and enable notifications to be among the first to see the daily videos we publish here on The Military Show. And thank you for watching.